Right now, as a second whistleblower comes forward, Republicans are using the Joker defense to shield the president from the indefensible. Plus, he's been the quietest cabinet member until now. Energy Secretary Rick Perry fighting back after the president throws him under the bus. And if the president's impeached, his chief of staff is reportedly predicting that the president will shoot the moon in 2020. Hear how many states Mick Mulvaney says President Trump will win. And in the middle of all of this, President Trump makes an explosive decision that causes even his closest supporters to accuse him of betraying U.S. allies who helped fight ISIS and abandoning them for slaughter. But first, Democrats are ratcheting up their impeachment inquiry into a defiant President Trump. House Democrats have now issued subpoenas to the Pentagon as well as the Office of Management and Budget for key documents related to Ukraine, which include the president's decision to withhold military assistance and attempts to pressure Ukraine to interfere with the 2020 election. And this comes as a second whistleblower has now come forward, claiming to have firsthand knowledge to support claims made by the original whistleblower, causing some Republicans to now scramble as they try to defend the president's actions while other Republicans are staying silent. In the meantime, Energy Secretary Rick Perry is now responding to President Trump, who says it was Perry who pressured him to call Ukraine's president on July 25th. But Perry says his push was for the leaders to talk about energy.
For the president of the United States to be comfortable that, Mr. President, you can feel assured that this country is headed in the right direction. Absolutely. I asked the president multiple times, Mr. President, we think it is in the United States and in Ukraine's best interest that you and the president of Ukraine have conversations, that you discuss the options that are there.
Our Caitlin Collins is at the White House. Tell us what you're hearing, Caitlin.
Yeah, so Brianna, all of this got started last week during this call with House Republicans where the president phoned in and he said he didn't even want to make that July call to the Ukrainian president in the first place. Instead, he told these lawmakers that it was the Energy Secretary, Rick Perry, who pushed him to do so. And there, of course, you see Perry confirming, yes, he did push the president to do so, but he said it wasn't about the Bidens. He wanted President Trump to call the Ukrainian president to have a discussion about corruption, about transparency. Rick Perry is someone who's been back and forth to Ukraine, I think three times now that he's visited. And in another interview, he's saying, no, I didn't bring up the Bidens during this sit down with the Ukrainian president. And today, in a statement, his spokesperson is confirming that, saying that in all of the conversations he's had with these Ukrainian officials, including the president, they say Hunter Biden and Joe Biden have never come up during any of those conversations. Of course, the question will be whether or not the Ukrainians were well aware that this is something that the president wanted them to look at while they were having these discussions with Rick Perry. And the question going forward will be, are House Democrats going to try to sit down with the Energy Secretary, someone who has really managed to avoid the president's ire for some time now that he's been in this cabinet position? The question now will be whether or not the president continues to try to use him as a scapegoat, essentially, for this Ukrainian call, and what exactly he says to Democrats if the White House lets him sit down with them.
Thank you for that report, Caitlin. Really appreciate it. And some Republicans now seem to be embracing a new narrative over President Trump publicly telling China to investigate the Biden family. He wasn't serious. They say it's a joke. He didn't really mean it. Here with me now to discuss is Matt Lewis. He is a senior columnist at the Daily Beast, and we have CNN chief political analyst Gloria Borger. Okay, so let's look at who's been saying this, right? Senator Marco Rubio said it. Congressman Jim Jordan said it. This is actually a defense that Trump has used before, right? When he was talking about Russia, if you're listening, about the Clinton emails. What's your reaction to this?
Well, he's such a cut-up, that Donald Trump, right? He's just full of these jokes, always joking. They're looking for a rationale. They're looking for an excuse. And I went back and looked at his answer to the question to Mueller in writing about those emails. And what his lawyers wrote was, I made the statement in jest and sarcastically, as was apparent to any objective observer, when he said, if you have the emails for Hillary Clinton. Well, it wasn't apparent to any objective observer, and any objective observer watching him say to China, with whom he is engaged in trade negotiations, hey, I really think it'd be a great idea for you to investigate the Bidens. I don't think that was funny.
Well, and look, I think that part of it is Republicans and Donald Trump want to give Republican voters different options, right? You can believe it's a perfect call, or you could take the Pompeo route that a quid pro quo is really another way of saying compromise and diplomacy. Or you could take the Marco Rubio, it's all just a joke line. Well, again, I don't think China or Ukraine think it's a joke when the president asks them to do something. But let's assume for a minute that he's just trolling us all and that he is joking and about things that are very serious. I think that makes him unfit for the presidency. So best case scenario, you should get rid of him because he's joking about very serious things that would be really inappropriate for a president to joke about.
And we don't know what he has said to the Chinese privately at this point. We know some of what he said about Hong Kong, for example, but there's still more parts of this onion to be peeled, and we'll find out what kind of a joke it was. The thing about Donald Trump is he often says things publicly that he also says privately.
Yeah. I want to listen to what was really a key moment over the weekend on the Sunday shows. This is one of the president's supporters, Senator Ron Johnson. This is what he said on Meet the Press.
I just want the truth. The American people want the truth.
So do you not trust the FBI? You don't trust the CIA?
No,
I'm just very confused here.
Absolutely
you don't trust
not. No, I
government
don't trust any of these guys in the Obama administration.
I'm just curious. Do you trust them now?
Now, who are you talking about?
The CIA and the FBI.
I don't trust Andrew McCabe.
Do you
I don't
trust
Andrew McCabe. I don't trust James Comey. I don't trust Peter Strzok. I don't trust John Brennan.
He named people who aren't there anymore as part of the intelligence community. That said, he's also playing into this idea that everyone in the intelligence community is like a holdover from the Obama administration, is a total political hack, which anyone with minimal exposure to this community knows writ large. That is totally not what is going on here. What's the effect of the senator saying this?
So first of all, I think this is a continuation of the last question, which is Republicans throwing out all sorts of, in some cases, mutually exclusive theories as to what happens and how to explain this and how to be an apologist. But first of all, this is a real departure for the Republican Party, which was once thought of as the party of law and order. In so many ways, the Republican brand, all the things that you thought you knew about the Republican Party's moral authority and being on the side of law and order, has been really cast aside in the Trump era. But why would he do this? Well, look, if you don't trust the media, if the media is all fake news, and you also don't trust the intelligence community or law enforcement, at some point you run out of people that you might trust other than Donald Trump. If you've essentially nullified all of these other institutions that are supposed to hold powerful people accountable, who's left to do that?
But this is a moment in time, but what's the long-term effect of doing that, Gloria?
Well, I think the Republican brand, such as it was, is gone. And I think Republicans now have to figure out what their party stands for. This is a party that stood for national security, that backed the FBI and the CIA. Now the president is announcing no presence in Syria. There's no
moral authority on the Kurds, on Hong Kong, on human rights.
There seems to be no there there. It is the party of Trump, which is different from the Republican Party. And I think what Ron Johnson was doing, by the way, was playing to Donald Trump, because he got himself in a little bit of trouble by saying, well, I winced when I was told that there might be some linkage between...
He didn't want there to be a linkage between military aid.
Exactly.
Right?
And I think
he
had to clean that up with Trump.
He had to clean that up with Trump, because Trump, as you can tell from his Twitter feed, is watching every television show.
I will say that was a demonstration of what Republicans are up against with President Trump, to watch Ron Johnson backpedal like that. Gloria, Matt, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And so what is the significance of a second whistleblower who's coming forward, and what can he or she provide? Plus, Democrats confronted at home.
To know from me. I wanted you to know from me
why some constituents are challenging their Democratic lawmakers' impeachment push, and even Republicans blasting the president for abandoning the American-backed fighters who helped fight against ISIS, why they're calling this a betrayal and saying that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is using the prospects of impeachment for President Trump as a fundraising plea for his own re-election bid. In a new ad, McConnell says that as Majority Leader, he'll shut down the impeachment. We have Tennessee Congressman Steve Cohen with us now. He is a Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee. Sir, thanks for joining us.
Nice to be with you.
What's your reaction to McConnell saying he'll block impeachment and fundraising off of this?
Well, I'm not surprised. I think Mitch always wanted to be an offensive guard in a football team because that's all he does is block. He blocked Merrill Garland's appointment to the Supreme Court, which I think was unprecedented and improper. He's blocking legislation and calls himself the Grim Reaper, so bills we passed on prescription drug prices, on reasonable gun laws, on ethics laws have been blocked by him. And now he's going to block the impeachment. So, yeah, he's trying out to be the Outland Trophy winner as the greatest blocking back in history, blocking lineman.
Energy Secretary Rick Perry is now defending himself because the president has said that he was the reason for the call with Ukraine's president. Perry today said he absolutely urged the president to call Ukraine, but thought the call should be about energy partnerships. He says he never mentioned the Biden family. Who do you believe here?
I believe Rick Perry. I think he's one of the few people in the cabinet who I've found to be I found him to be a straight shooter, and I've found him a very, very nice guy. And the president, of course, has a track record that is probably the worst of anybody in history. If he was a horse in the racing form, I think they would give him the worst track rating imaginable. I mean, he's a prevaricator.
I want to ask you what you've been watching on recess, maybe not in your district, but you know that there are members who are holding these town halls in their home districts, and we're getting the sense of what they're dealing with. Let's watch part of Michigan Democrat Alyssa Slotkin's town hall.
Myself and 6 other members of the freshman class in Congress, all former military or former CIA, wrote a joint op-ed and came out in support of an impeachment inquiry. And I wanted you to know from me,
when you fell off the cliff for me was when you joined the coup against our president. That's right.
What's the rush with the impeachment? Impeachment is a serious thing. This would be only the 4th president in the history to be impeached, and to try to impeach him on something like this is really stretching it.
So we get a sense there for Congresswoman Slotkin just of the mixed response, right, that she's getting. How does your caucus plan to inform constituents? And should some Democratic members understand that this likely could cost them their jobs?
Well, I think this 2-week break, which I was not particularly in favor of, but I think it's been productive. Adam Schiff and the Intelligence Committee has stayed focused on this, as has Eliot Engel and Elijah Cummings as the 3 committees most responsible for this foreign policy intervention, this subversion of our Constitution and abuse of power for the benefit of a national, of the president politically dealing with an international situation in a country where we promised military aid, and then as an abuse of power conditioned it pretty much on this investigation of his rival, Joe Biden. I know it could be difficult in some people's districts. I listened to Congressman Slotkin, and I think she and her 6 colleagues did the country a service by coming together and writing that op-ed, explaining their position. They're all former military, Air Force, Navy, CIA, intelligence people, and they explained why they resisted impeachment in the past, but that this action and calling a foreign power and conditioning, we'd like you to do us a favor, though, and cutting off the military aid that they needed was a need for it.
Do you think this will cost some of your colleagues their jobs?
I don't think it will, because I think the American public will see that they made a thoughtful decision, that it was the right thing to do, that this president should be impeached for doing this because he is it's against all laws. George Washington warned us as far back as his election not to get involved with foreign entities. American elections are supposed to be determined by Americans, and we shouldn't be having Russians involved. Russia was involved. The CIA, the FBI, the Justice Department, the Mueller report all said it. Trump still doesn't believe it, and now to Paris, Senator Johnson doesn't believe it. We can't be operating in an area where some people hear the truth and some people refuse to hear the truth and to get what they call fake news, and they just discount the truth. The Slykin's town hall, most of the people were supportive of her position, I believe. There were some people in red hats who yelled out and hollered, but they were a minority in that crowd. She handled it very, very well. They did this on the Affordable Care Act and came out to his town halls and made their voices heard, but in stronger numbers. That was a strong response.
I do just want to be clear on what we just watched, Congressman. There were constituents there who were not wearing red hats, and they were asking thoughtful questions, and they had concerns. I just want to be clear about that. I do, unfortunately, Congressman, I am out of time, so we will, of course, see you again very soon, Congressman Steve Cohen. Thank you so much.
Brianna, I watched it too, and she handled it well, and they were not the majority in that crowd. But I think the people will support Congress people that support holding up their oath and supporting the Constitution, and that's what America's about.
All right, Congressman, thank you. It's very good to see you.
You're welcome.
So even though the president seems to be his own whistleblower, another has come forward. We'll have the details next. Plus, with his explosive decision to pull troops out of northeast Syria, the president is being accused of leaving American-backed forces to die in a slaughter. Policy reversal by President Trump. The White House announced the withdrawal just last night of U.S. troops from an area in northeast Syria along the border with Turkey, effectively clearing the way for an invasion by Turkish forces. Turkey is targeting Kurdish fighters who worked with the U.S. troops to defeat ISIS in the region. President Trump says the Kurds were paid for their help, and the U.S. will only fight when it benefits the U.S. But just a few months ago, the president was adamant that the U.S. would protect the Kurds.
He had a 65,000-man army at the border, and he was going to wipe out the Kurds who helped us with ISIS. We took out the caliphate. We have 100% of the caliphate. And I called him and I asked him not to do it. They are, I guess, natural enemies of his or Turkey's. And he hasn't done it. They were lined up to go out and wipe out the people that we just defeated the ISIS caliphate with. And I said, you can't do that. You can't do it. And he didn't do it.
Now, President Trump is already getting pushback from within his own party. Senator Lindsey Graham, who's usually a staunch Trump defender, criticized the decision.
I expect the American president to do what's in our national security interest. Mm-hmm. It's never in our national security interest to abandon an ally who's helped us fight ISIS. It's never in our national security interest to create the conditions for the reemergence of ISIS.
And President Trump's former ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, was even more blunt, saying leaving the Kurds, quote, to die is a big mistake. With me here is Major General Spider Marks. He is a retired commanding general of the U.S. Army Intelligence Center. He has a lot of experience in this area. And I want to start with these buffer zones, right, that we're seeing. What does Turkey control? What do they want to grab here?
Yeah, what Turkey is looking to try to achieve is this buffer zone along the border here with Syria, primarily because they want some standoff from the Kurds. Again, as has been indicated, the Kurds in multiple forms have been doing a lot of heavy lifting for the United States in our desire to try to eliminate ISIS. ISIS is now isolated. The caliphate is essentially destroyed. They still remain in Syria. But Turkey would like to have this border so that there is room for them to have a safe zone, because Turkey views the Kurds. 20% of the Turkish population is Kurds. Mm-hmm. The Kurds want an independent Kurdistan of some sort. Turkey has forever labeled them a terrorist organization. That's what they're trying to achieve, what Turkey's trying to achieve.
So ISIS is isolated, the caliphate is destroyed, but what will this do to ISIS? And what's the concern?
The purpose of the buffer zone is exactly to allow Turkey, has less to do with ISIS and more to do with Turkey's relationship with the Kurds, and to achieve some standoff primarily. Turkey feels like it can take care of itself. What it doesn't want to have to do is be in a position to go after Kurds and to have an international body that will keep the Kurds away from Turkey.
So right now the president says if Turkey does anything that he considers off limits, he's going to destroy Turkey's economy.
Pretty bold.
Yep. What do you make of this?
Well, the problem is Turkey has indicated that it's got a pretty independent stance globally in terms of its relationship. Again, let's be frank, Turkey is a NATO partner. The United States and NATO are in a better position with Turkey on our southeastern flank there. And Turkey has relationships, burgeoning relationships with both Iran, a problem for us, and Turkey is buying air defense weapon systems from Russia. They operate independently, irrespective necessarily of what the United States would like to try to achieve.
When you hear Ambassador Haley, former Ambassador Haley,
Right.
saying that this is leaving Kurds to die, I mean, these are the fighters who fought alongside U.S. forces. What message does this send to other potentially future allies?
Yeah, that's the problem. The Kurds did some tremendous fighting, not only in support of our objectives, but on their own to go after ISIS. We had a shared view in terms of the challenges with ISIS, and the Kurds could accomplish tactically things that we could not. So it sends a very powerful message to those who are on the fence, primarily, Brianna. We want those internationally who are on the fence trying to decide whether the United States is a place where they want to be aligned. We want them on our side, and this sends a lot of doubt in their mind when they're making those decisions.
How does the U.S. treat their friends? Spider Marks, thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
A second whistleblower comes forward with what their lawyer calls firsthand knowledge of President Trump's actions on Ukraine, what that means for the impeachment case against President Trump. And the president's allies are doing all they can to defend him. One powerful GOP senator even casting doubt on the credibility of the FBI and CIA. We are back now with more on the bombshell revelation that not one, but two whistleblowers have now come forward with accusations concerning the president and his interactions with Ukraine. Joining me now to discuss is national security analyst and a specialist in whistleblowing cases for the Government Accountability Project, Irvin McCullough, with us. So we know now there's two whistleblowers, but one of the attorneys representing them mentions multiple whistleblowers. What do you make of that?
Well, this is an easy way for whistleblowers to show solidarity with one another. Again, these whistleblowers are all government employees that presumably worked together inside the administration at one point. The fact that a second whistleblower is coming out in a very public way through the public media acknowledging the whistleblower's presence, now that just shows solidarity, that these concerns were so big that they had to be mentioned by not just one person, but two. It was weighing on this person's conscience so much that they had to make a formal whistleblowing disclosure, or at least begin that process.
But multiple. Do you think there's more than two?
I really think there could be. Again, the Intelligence Community Inspector General, the watchdog responsible for originally reviewing the first whistleblower's complaint, interviewed multiple officials with relevant knowledge. Each of those people could be considered a whistleblower and would probably have a lot to say in their own whistleblowing disclosures.
What does it mean if there's not just one, that there is two, or maybe there's more than two? Is there strength in numbers here?
There certainly is. Again, the Inspector General substantiated the first whistleblower's complaint as credible. Now that means that if other people are coming out and saying the same thing, that's just a green check mark for the credibility of the first original whistleblower, and it's more facts for the congressional investigative committees here to actually look into as part of the impeachment inquiry.
Did you find it interesting the attorney stressed firsthand knowledge? Because we've heard one of the attack lines, although it doesn't actually legally matter, Republicans have said, oh, this is just hearsay of this first whistleblower that we've seen. He's just reporting things he's heard about the conversation, even though what he reported actually hews very closely, like exactly to the transcript. What's with this firsthand knowledge claim?
Well, I think that is a response to the president's defenders here. They are all saying that the first whistleblower did not have firsthand knowledge, which again is a meaningless, non-legal distinction. But the fact that the attorneys are saying that this whistleblower has that credible firsthand knowledge is important because, again, that is more evidence that the congressional investigators can then use to make their case to either impeach or not impeach President Trump.
Irvin, thank you.
Thank you.
President Trump's allies are back on the attack with new attempts to discredit this second whistleblower. And now one GOP senator is even going so far as to question the credibility of the nation's top law enforcement and intelligence agencies.
I just want the truth. The American people want the truth.
So do you not trust do you not trust the FBI? You don't trust the CIA?
No,
I'm just very confused here.
Absolutely
you don't trust
not.
either
After
of those
Peter Strzok and
agencies.
Lisa Page?
Okay.
After James Comey,
you believe the FBI and the CIA,
John
these
Brennan? No, I don't
agencies?
trust any of these guys in the Obama administration. I don't trust any of them.
You don't trust them now? Do you trust them now?
No, I didn't trust them back then.
Former CIA operative and CNN intelligence and security analyst Robert Baer is joining me now. Bob, tell us, how concerning is it for the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee to be talking like this?
It's very concerning. I've talked to somebody from Homeland Security last night, and look, they're demoralized, the federal government, especially the FBI. These hard right conspiracy theorists are claiming that there's a deep state, that there's an active program to undermine this administration, which of course is just not true. I mean, the FBI deals in facts, as does the CIA, and you've got a lot of FBI agents now are asking the question, should I risk my retirement to go after one of these subjects, whether it could be Russia, Iran, or anything else, because they're truly worried about ending up like the former FBI director McCabe, under some sort of indictment or threat. Demoralizing, that's all I can tell you.
What do members of the intelligence community, when they hear things like this, do? Do they just plod along and kind of do their jobs and keep their ears closed and do the work, or are they demoralized, or is it both?
They're demoralized. Like, let's say there's a Russian case that comes up. If you're an FBI agent, should you take it on or just turn the guy away? And in a lot of cases, I can't give you specifics, but they're turning them away. This is doing major damage.
You have reason to believe that they are
intelligence.
literally self-editing the cases they take up because of where the president is on these issues?
I know they are, for a fact. They don't want to touch it. They're very worried, and they're saying, look, this is the commander-in-chief. We take orders from the commander-in-chief, chief law enforcement officer, and if he doesn't care about the facts involving Russia or North Korea or Iran or the rest of it, it's not our business to change this. And that's the state of the government. I have never seen it so bad.
So then what does that mean for the national security of the U.S. when that happens?
It means we're less safe. Let's take Syria. Pulling out of Syria, we're less safe. This president is endangering lives by closing off the intelligence community because it is fact-based. He doesn't like the facts, and it's hurting us.
All right, Bob Baer, thank you so much. We really appreciate your perspective on this. The Supreme Court kicking off what is being called a blockbuster term today, packed with cases on a bunch of hot-button topics. But will they take up a landmark case on how the military prosecutes rape? We have details on the legal loophole that is letting accused rapists walk free next. About military sexual assault. So a warning that what you are about to hear is graphic. As the Supreme Court begins its new term today, it will decide whether to take up a landmark case on how the military prosecutes rape. At issue are rapes and sexual assaults that happened between 1986 and 2006. And that is significant because it often takes victims years and years to come forward, especially in the military. And some of those victims are only doing so now. The Trump administration is siding with rape victims who have gone to trial and seen their rapists convicted, including one who raped 2 women, only to have those convictions thrown out because of a ruling last year by the top military appeals court. Now it's up to the Supreme Court. Do they take up this case? Do they overrule the military justice system? I sat down with 3 women whose lives have been turned inside out by this military court decision.
I've been asked over and over and over and over and over again, what is it that you want? My answer has been the truth to be told.
Jennifer Elmore's father is retired 2-star Army General James Grazioplane. She says she was 3 years old when she first remembers him sexually abusing her.
In the summer of 1974, we came home to visit my grandmother in upstate New York. I took my underwear down and he masturbated himself, touching me. I knew not what really was happening, but I knew I was terrified and this was very bad.
The abuse escalated to rapes, she says, and continued for years. In 1986, her mother, Anne Marie, wrote to a family member that her husband was taking perverted liberties with my child and had made an attempt at sexually molesting Jennifer. She was sleeping, thank God, and I caught him before he got started. Anne Marie Grazioplane, who is still married to her husband, told CNN her words had been distorted. The Army charged the general with 6 counts of rape, more than 2 decades after the alleged abuse stopped. Grazioplane pleaded not guilty, but he never saw his day in court. That's because the top military appeals court ruled in a separate case, U.S. v. Mengajas, that rapes between 1986 and 2006 have a statute of limitations of 5 years. The court had reversed long-standing precedent.
The countless times my father harmed me, I would think, I'm going to stay silent because if I spoke, they're not going to believe me. And worse yet, if they do believe me, they're not going to do anything.
In total, the military dismissed or declined to prosecute at least 10 alleged rapes from that time period. 5 victims who had already secured convictions saw military courts vacate them.
They get their rank back, they get their benefits back. They also don't have to register as a sex offender.
One of Harmony Allen's instructors, Master Sergeant Richard Collins, raped and beat her in 2000. Harmony says she fought back.
I hit him in the face. He became enraged and he punched me in my face. He knocked me out, and when I woke up, he was inside of me.
A military jury sentenced Collins to 16.5 years in prison in 2017, but he served just 2 before successfully appealing. Collins' lawyer declined to comment for this story.
Well, after it happened, I didn't think anybody would believe me.
DK, whose identity CNN is not disclosing, was raped in 2005 by Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Michael Briggs.
I told him no, I didn't want to. I told him to stop. And then he started raping me. The next morning when I woke up, I was in a lot of pain. I had blood all over me. I had bruises on my thighs. I was extremely swollen. I couldn't sit down.
8 years later, DK officially reported her rape to the military. Then she called Michael Briggs on the phone.
Hey, Colonel Briggs.
Hi, this is Sergeant. Actually, you probably remember me as Airman from when we were stationed at Luke together.
Yes.
Air Force investigators were recording the call.
You raped me. You destroyed me. For 8 years, I have had to live with this by myself. I can't talk about it. I can't tell anybody. You took everything from me. Why?
I didn't know the repercussions, and even if I did, I was selfish.
I need to hear you say you're sorry for raping me.
I am sorry. I have been sorry. I will always be sorry for raping you.
Briggs was convicted in 2014, but a court dismissed his conviction this year, and an attorney for Briggs says he maintains his innocence. Now the Trump administration has taken the unusual step of asking the Supreme Court to overrule the top military appeals court.
The Department of Justice's goal is not just to win, but to ensure that justice is served.
Solicitor General Noel Francisco, seen here at his confirmation hearing in 2017, is arguing that Congress did not intend for there to be a statute of limitations for sexual assaults in the military at the time that DK and Harmony were raped.
What the government is saying here is that, first of all, the Appeals Court for the Armed Forces got it wrong, and that the Supreme Court should correct that, but also in a larger sense is saying this is very important to larger military policy.
The military declined to comment on ongoing legal matters, but the Pentagon is struggling to confront an epidemic. In the Me Too era, reports of sexual assaults have risen dramatically in the armed forces, up 38% from 2016 to 2018. Don Christensen was chief prosecutor for the Air Force until 2014 and now advocates for victims of military sexual assault. He says the military fails to hold most rapists accountable.
If a rapist or sex offender knows that 99% of the time he or she will never be held accountable, they're disincentivized to ever change. It also sends a bad message to the entire force that this is something we don't care about.
Jennifer Elmore has sought justice elsewhere, in Virginia, where there is no statute of limitations for rape. Retired General Grazioplane is scheduled to stand trial there in January on multiple rape counts. He has yet to enter a plea.
I'm incredibly grateful that I have another chance that others have not gotten, who are struggling with essentially being told, you are not worth, which is what a victim hears and knows. You're not worth something different.
For DK and Harmony, all they can do is wait and watch the Supreme Court in the hope it will decide to hear their cases.
Now, if the Supreme Court chooses to take on these cases, it would be a first. The justices weighing in on sexual misconduct in the Me Too era, as well as the issue of military sexual assault, all with its newest justice, Brett Kavanaugh, who was confirmed last fall amid allegations that he sexually assaulted a woman when he was in high school. And with another whistleblower coming forward now, Republicans are trying to defend the president's demands that foreign countries investigate political rivals by saying it's all a joke. We'll show you how the president's defense has evolved on this. Plus, Fox News host Tucker Carlson comes out against the president's call with Ukraine. Is this the first crack on his